Got it. Got it. Okay. And Brian, anything you want to add to that on how to kind of, any tech that you're using now to make this process more automated?
Sure. Yeah, I think to add on to what Ying mentioned, especially around the point of how to scale it, for larger organization, I think having a standardized process is really important. And I guess maybe also to Fiona's point about when companies are hiring in multiple countries, understanding the nuance in different countries is also extremely important as well. So, I think both of these kind of lead into how can you actually standardize the process, in terms of a workflow, that you can automate. So, in Omni, we do use our own system, which basically can help a lot with the automation of onboarding, offboarding, or any HR process within the organization. So things like basically, how, starting from what information you need to collect from the employee. For example, Singapore or Malaysia, Indonesia, every country has their own requirements that you need to collect. So how can you actually standardize that process is quite important, and that we can basically, leverage our tool for that. But at the same time, I would say, tech can essentially only eliminate the manual work. I would still, reiterate that at the end of the day, is a people experience. So how to, actually show the empathy and actually, build a scalable process in place, and how to design that process is a lot more important as well.
I got something to share, Eden,
Got it.
with regards to what
Yes.
Brian shared, right, about the people part. I think people sometimes underestimate the power of personnel in actually onboarding. I like to give a few examples of our experiences, right? How do I benchmark, right? A good onboarding process is somebody who comes from a big company or any company is telling me, wow, this is the easiest onboarding process I ever experienced, in my career, my entire career. So I think these are things I use as a matrix, right? Benchmark. So before we use Esevel, right, we were really doing a lot of laptop ourselves, and that process is always very laborious, and I think that there's always this delay. So the consistency to be able to, I want to give an example. When we first started out, we actually asked people to buy their own laptops, and true enough, people were willing to do that and then reimburse through the company. So, but I think over time, as you grow, you want to make sure that the what I call this employee experience, on onboarding is a critical process, that we look at different touch points. What do we want to touch them? So from a human resource information system to the IT part, and I think the empowerment to be able to select what you want, and use what you want, right, within that comfort range gives people empowerment. And I think one thing I wanted to emphasize on Brian's conversation was because I remember this as a few people that I did on we always do an onboarding experience, survey after that, after 60 days they join the company. So what did they like most about the onboarding process as well? No, I think you will be surprised to know that personnel is the one of the key most important thing, and how I like to set them up for success for any people who join my team is that I look at the people they need to work with and collaborate with. I actually ask them to talk to those people. I connect them with those people and say it could be a coffee discussion, be it 30 minutes, just joining the company in less than 1 week, right? They have a 360 around talking to these people, or within the next 2 weeks, they almost know the whole company. And that gives a very different kind of feeling to the individual, like, hey, also, this is what the culture is about. And also, we also try to put in people that has been with the company a bit longer, a bit more stable. So they also bring on different kind of energy, to the excitement of the work that they do. And I'm not going to kid you that this really does make a very big difference to the person joining for the first time. So I think this is very powerful as a tool that we use the right personnel, and connect them with the right personnel, to be able to feel the camaraderie of the company, especially when it's a virtual onboarding. Yeah, I think this is going to be critical. Yeah.
Yeah, actually very interesting, right? If you look at the polls, right, the top two concerns, right, with hiring a distributed team is actually the culture, a virtual culture, in fact. And how do you then communicate and engage them as the top two most biggest concern when it comes to hiring remote teams, right? So, Fiona, do you want to add on anything there? I mean, you said that you kind of get them to kind of talk to everybody there, right?
Yes. So it's even
what about the engagement?
Yeah, so even you're the most junior intern that comes in, I will let you talk to my strain engineer director. I'll let you speak to my chief scientific officer. And because they know that they have access to all these people, not because I'm a junior staff, I don't have access to these people. You want to create a flat organization culture, then you do it, and you realize that when the team are willing to come in and do and commit their times like that, right, you know the culture of the organization straight away, right? It's not that, oh, that I don't have access to this chief scientific officer, I don't have access to these people. You know, even for the most junior hires, we put 3 to 4 key people. If we know that some of the C-levels are traveling, we put them with some of the other C-levels as well. So I think this sets a very strong precedent in terms of your culture, what you believe in as an organization, and they are experiencing it on day one when they join the organization. So it's going to be very powerful, you know, in terms of impression for them. You know, of course, I know CEOs are busy all the time, but I think it's also critical to know that there are certain spot points you want to make sure that they go out becoming referrals of your company as well. You know, so I think we do try to make an effort as much as possible. And I would think that checkpoints are important. We do a 1 month, you know, checkpoint. We do a 3 month and a 6 months checkpoint with them as well. So this is something I would say, if you ask me, between the relationship of the HR, you know, the hiring manager, and of course the different people they talk to, right? The hiring manager is usually the one the most impactful, you know, because I remember we did one virtual onboarding, right, where the hiring manager was traveling, he couldn't come, and then that lady said that this is not working for me. You know, the candidate told us this is when she joined us that this is really not working, and then eventually we said, okay, you know, we're gonna reschedule one more, you know, with the hiring manager, because the hiring manager sets expectation about what needs to be done, what is something that we're looking at, and this grounds the person when they join the company. Oh, actually this is expected, and the clearer it is for them, the better it is for them, because they know what's expected in the 30, 60, 90 days. And that brings a lot of confidence in their candidate to know that how when they first joining, what they need to achieve as well. So I think if you ask me, in the interest of really time and whatever, I sometimes put a C-suite, I sometimes put a hiring manager, I put a HR there, you know, like 3 key person. But if I want the person to, if I know that the person's role is going to collaborate with a lot of different people in the company, then they have to talk to different people. So that already sets that space that I know you. And interestingly, I realized that sometimes these topics is not around the work that you do, is I get to know you as a person, you know, and that's the part when I need to work with you again the next time around in a virtual call. It sets a very different kind of tone, you know, when we are working. Also, there's a common language and common thing that we know about each other. So I think that helps a lot in building a virtual culture in a more realistic way, rather than just purely, you know, we come together for lunch and all this. So I think I would always empower the individual to take that first step, you know, and tell them who they should talk to. And that actually sets them free to be able to do a lot more things after that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think a lot of companies always talk about flat hierarchy, but yeah, I think, you know, what you guys are doing day one, putting people, like really scheduling for them to chat with more people, I think it really sets the precedence. And it's very empowering, like you mentioned, right? I think 1 month down the road, if they need to work with this person, it's very awkward if they have not kind of, I wouldn't use the word awkward, but I think it's way warmer, way more like there's this camaraderie already built on day one that makes it so much easier, right? And perhaps maybe that's the reason why I think there's this research here that I'm just kind of quoting here. There's this Fortune 2023 research that 36% or more of the remote hires are likely to quit if they feel undertrained, disoriented, devalued during onboarding. So I think having this process definitely makes a lot of sense as well. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks for sharing, everybody. So I would like to move on to the last topic of today, which is really more of how can we set them up for success? How do we then nurture these global teams for long-term success? So I'll come back to Yi Ying as well on this question. So when team members are distributed, it can be very difficult to create this bond, right? And it could be very detrimental to the teamwork and the company's culture. So any ideas or what have you actually done in your current company to foster stronger bonds and a stronger company culture?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question. And to be frank, like we are also still figuring this out as a company as well. Would love to learn from the examples here. But what I found, you know, at a personal level, right, is that I believe that there's a certain type of employee who's actually very well suited to distributed work, to remote work. So we tend to hire for that certain fit. So I would call it like the right fit. I believe is very important. And in our experience, I think what has worked well is an individual who's mature, right? So someone who's mature enough, you know, to be able to be trusted with distributed work, someone who is at least of like mid-level experience and above. So, you know, people who are not too junior, who might need a lot of like hand-holding. And I think most importantly, it's someone who believes who has a passion for the purpose that we have as well, right? And we can really see it in their eyes, and their eyes light up when we tell them about like the purpose of the company. So I would say hiring for the right fit, extremely important for us. Other things that we try to do, we have daily stand-up meetings every day. Right now, we're doing it on a video call, and like it's 15 minutes. It's compulsory for everyone to come in and join. We chit chat, we break ice before we actually start the stand-up meeting. We don't deal with problems during the meeting itself, but we just highlight our highest priority for the day. And the third thing that we do monthly. I do monthly one-on-ones with my direct report, and quarterly one-on-ones right now with the rest of the team as well. So during the one-on-ones, we don't really talk about work, but we talk more about their career progression, their family, like any issues that they're facing, and so on. So try to remove it from the work perspective as much as possible. Yeah.
Interesting. Brian, anything what about your side?
Sure. Yeah, I would definitely second the point on having the regular catch-ups. I think that's really important. I think Yuan also brought up a very good point that, how to actually let the person feel that we treat them as a person, not just about work, but how do we really care about them? And that also, like in terms of career progression, what are the things that they want to learn, and what can we actually shape a career path, or maybe potentially bring in resources to actually help them to grow into that area. I think being able to just regularly bring up that conversation, and then helping them to execute that. It can be in small steps, but iterating quickly and along the direction that the person wants, and also how we see them grow in the direction is really important as well. So I think fostering the learning and growth is important, making them feel like we are treating them as a person. And also another one that I would also highlight is that there can be a lot of like tricks or things that we can do to essentially elevate the experience. One thing that we are trying recently in our so we do weekly team meetings like within individual teams. So let's say sales team, marketing team, product team, we have weekly meetings within that team. And one thing we are trying out recently is that before we talk about work and before we do a regular update, we ask everyone just around the team to share something unique that they have done or see recently. And it's just 1 minute sharing, just quickly go around the room. But it's something that essentially add a human touch as well to the process, and instead of just talking about work. So I thought that was something that is quite helpful in engagement. And also in countries or regions where we don't have the head office, but there are a sizable or a few members who are in that regions. We try to encourage them to meet up, hang out as well, and it will become like company sponsored event for them to just build that local bonding, and as well as something that the company would be sponsoring and supportive of.
Got it. And what about Fiona? Anything you want to add?
Well, I like to build on what Brian and Ying has shared, especially what Brian has shared about, companies talk about empathy all the time, but sometimes they don't even know what is happening to the employee's life, right? And sometimes you hear it through somebody, your colleague, and that's when you are empowered to do something, So I give an example of one of my colleague, she has to go back to Australia, and she was working in Singapore with us. She has to go back because of family reasons. And we knew that working from home is going to kill her in a certain way. She really enjoys the office kind of environment. So when she reached the 3rd month of it, we decided to send her a card, and we decided to just write physically a card. We all just signed in the whole Singapore office and wrote to her basically what we missed her and what we need her to do, because she was going through a very tough seasons of her family life. So we wrote that, and it was just a simple card. We don't, and somebody was traveling to Australia. We said, can you just help us send that card? So I think these are things that are simple, but they speak a lot, to the individuals who's working virtually. So I think milestones needs to be celebrated. We have colleagues who have just given birth, and all this, we want to be there with them, and sometimes it's not about their family members. It's about knowing that there's a team supporting them at the back, where they're going through different stages, and that makes a very big difference. I feel, that you don't always have to be very expensive things. Now, between a virtual card and of course a hand signed card, we are still a bit more traditional. Our team still like to sign a hand card, where we can write our own personal messages to the individual, because that individual could have touched us in different ways, right? So I would say that you need to be present, when you want to talk about virtual teams, and I think at the size of like 40 to 50 people, you can still do that a lot, but of course that's a different ballgame. We're talking about 50 and 100, but I would say that we always have our own group location-based gatherings, but we also have a monthly hangout, right? Where we get to talk about different areas of our work, and also town halls, and especially difficult information that we need to share about the business decisions that we have to make. I think we have everybody on board, and we share very, even our CEO had to share in a very transparent way, right? Why was that decision being made? So that that you don't hear the news through another person. You hear the news through the CEO. So I think this is something that sometimes we underestimate and think that, and I know that I go to office a lot more now is because I want to hear those coffee discussions, right? Because those coffee discussions means that maybe my colleague is the person in the C-suite is not based in Singapore, will not know this is happening. Now I can actually prompt that person that I heard this over coffee, do you want to talk to your team? Now this helps that person as a manager to connect with the team, even he's not here physically. So I think the C-suites among us at different locations try to really be very near to the ground as well, so that we are always sending information to one another, so that in our weekly meetings, we are sharing like, oh, we heard this, there are some concerns, is there something we need to address, and as a C-suite team together as well. So this really knit down a lot of I would say the kind of conversations that happen with a lot of uncertainty that they observe and they perceive. And I think that really brings in a lot of bonding, for individuals. So I would say as much as we have technology and all this, but simple things like this, I think does help an employee. And even our teams, right? We have Amazon, right? So sometimes during Christmas and all this, we just like, I will buy books for everybody, and I choose different types of books for different people, because I think different people need different things, right? So I say, okay, maybe this person is about really growth now, and this person is really about women empowerment, then we buy different types of books. So it becomes a culture that we do, so different C-suites will do it for different people in their teams as well. So I think these are things that are not difficult with technology. It helps you to bond, and then people will be happy receiving something, from the company, and it's a surprise for them for Christmas and all this. So I think we tend to do that a lot more, on all these small efforts. As a startup, we can't be spending a lot of money, but simple things that help them grow, that things that we observe about them, that we know they're facing a challenge, and that present would mean a difference. So lately we also just got our self-GRAS approval. So we did a mark, and we have decided that every time we reach a milestone, we're going to create a swag, for the company. So if you stay longer, you have like 10 swags, with the company. So we thought this is a good way to prove your time with the company and going through with different milestones. So the next one we're looking at is our Series B funding. So if we do hit that target of the Series B funding, there will be another swag, So it gives people that sense of like, I want to stay on to see, what can I get, out of this. So I think these are things that we have done, for a very global team, and it seems to have worked, and people are happy, with the culture as well. Yeah.
I love the thoughtfulness behind the gift. I think it's not so much the gift itself, but the thoughtfulness behind the gift. Like knowing exactly what someone needs at this season of their lives and getting a book just for that, I think is very thoughtful. And I think it's something that perhaps we'll implement internally for my side as well. Yeah. So anyway, I think I have a last question for Brian and Yuying actually. So I would like to talk more about a trend, which is we know that distributed teams, remote work is going to be the default. Any other trends do you anticipate in the near future, Brian?
Sure. Yeah, I think like essentially, the world is getting smaller. I think, hear me okay? I know this might be some issue with my Wi-Fi. Okay, great. Yeah. So I think essentially, companies need to find a way to adapt to a multi-country approach. I think we discussed quite a few things around like, how can we scale, in terms of hiring the right people, what are technology tools out there, what are things that we need to look out for from an HR perspective, when maybe say picking the right EOL providers. So I think those are really important skill set, that to equip the modern generation of companies. I think, just in terms of a local domestic context as well, what we realize, or what we notice as well, is that a lot of people, even in the same country, a lot of times they prefer more of a hybrid or remote work as well. So I think that trend is definitely going to stay. And having to find a way to eventually engage, engage employees in a more remote settings and treating everyone equally between, in country and out of the country is something that I think is really important.
Yep, so definitely agree, Brian. I think that remote hybrid work definitely here to stay. Definitely distributed teams across the region here in Southeast Asia. And just to mention a very interesting statistic I saw that day. So this was by a company called IDC. They did a survey of like companies in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, India, and all that. And they found that actually fully 40% of them, so not just tech startups, right, but all sorts of companies, 40% of them intend to fill about 20 to 30% of their headcount with remote-based jobs. So that's really a huge shift, I feel, not just in tech startups or tech-enabled companies, but even in the SME sectors as well. And, I think that really it's because of demographic kind of changes, macroeconomic changes. Talent shortage in developed countries will always be here. In fact, I think it will be aggravated even in the future. And, companies would also be looking for cost savings by moving to more talent-rich kind of countries, right? So like Indonesia, Philippines, and India, and so on. Especially companies that are looking to quickly grow. So they want to efficiently scale up their teams and so on. So they will look towards the talent pools in all these countries in order to resource themselves. And I think one thing definitely will happen without fail, and which is that technology will continue improving our experience with remote work, right? So right now we have Zoom, we have Slack, we have like EORs, and we have like headhunters like yourself. But in the future, who knows, there will be even more things that will help us to work even more effectively distributed. So for that, I am assured that remote work is the way to go.
Got it. Yeah. So thanks everyone for sharing on how to set the team up for success in the long term. So we have come to the end of all the questions. So I think right now we'd like to just open up to everyone for Q&A. So I think for everyone who has any questions, feel free to add into the chat box. I think right now we don't yet have any questions. So once again, I think just want to encourage everyone. I think there's no any questions would be good, right? So do feel free to add your questions, and we'll get the panel here to answer the questions. Okay, we do have some coming in, so let's wait for a while for more questions to come in. Okay, I think we can just start first with some questions. So, okay, we have a question from Arun, which is, what are the best practices for remote employee retention? Anyone want to take a jab at this question?
Sure, I guess I can take a first step and then feel free to add on to it as well. I think so we have discussed quite a few things around like how we see engagement could work in remote settings during the panel discussion. So things like I think having a regular catch up with the team, being creative with them. Like I think Fiona has mentioned quite a few things where the thoughtfulness behind the initiative is really important. Sending the books, sending a card, handwritten. I think those initiatives that really let the employee feel like they are part of the team. The company cares a lot about them, their well-being, and them as a person. I think that's probably the most important principle in improving the retention of the team. The company can do to regularly monitor it. For example, like sending an engagement survey, doing a pulse check to see how do people feel about this. I think those would help to understand the sentiment overall. And I think at the end of the day, from maybe a founder or HR manager perspective, there are events that can be done, but at the end of the day, a lot of these also comes down to the actual day-to-day work. The manager that the person worked with. How can that manager really incorporate and integrate everyone in the team to be on the same page. How do they really reach out and engage on a regular basis? I think that's something that would really build the belonging with the employee.
Got it.
Maybe I can take a step at this as well. Yeah. So, what I found with, employees that are based overseas is that they still need the same kind of practices that we would do for our regular employees over here. So this would be things like, the regular performance reviews, the annual salary reviews, and all that. I feel that these kind of things need to be laid out very transparently as part of a company's policy, whether it's in a company's kind of Wikipedia page or something along that line, so that they know with certainty that these things are going to happen at these certain timings, right? Another thing that I found useful as well is that I found that people really only stay on with the company if they see themselves growing, right? It's no different from an employee who's locally and who's with you locally and an employee who is remotely based as well. We cannot expect that person to be contented doing the same thing over and over again, year after year, at the same salary. So what we do within Esevel is that we do give a budget for employees to do learning and development. So of course, we have not yet engaged like a professional platform to do so. but each employee can have a few $100 budget per year, and they can go and take Coursera courses and things that are related to their field of work that they really would like to learn more about. So that's what we've done internally.
Got it. And I think there's another pretty interesting question by Tian. So how do you measure the strength of a company culture and team cohesion in a remote setting? I think sometimes very much in person, there's a bit of this gut feel, see the bustling energy in the office, but in a remote setting can be quite tricky, right? So I think this question is to anybody who wants to answer. Yeah, how to measure the strength of the company culture?
I think for Turtle Tree, we do a consistent quarterly employee well-being survey. And also whether you promote the company, right? You won't promote a company that you don't feel you are part of the culture and the team. So those survey results tells us a story. And we usually use that also looking at the exit when somebody leaves the company. Why do they leave the company and all this, right? We also have questions that goes on culture as well as the team engagement. So and also their managers. I think we try to correlate different survey plus different surveys that we do, and then we try to collate and see a pattern. Is there a pattern across trends, right? In the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, because these trends usually tell us, like I give you an example, right? In the process of what we're doing our fundraising, there's a lot of people who feel like, unsure, and then we saw that there were a lot of people talking about they were unsure about the fundraising. What happens in the fundraising? What is the status of the fundraising? Then we decide that every month in our monthly hangout, right, we're going to tell people about what's happening in the fundraise, that how many investors are there that we're looking at now currently, where they are at this point in time, what's our target in this period, what's our target in the next period. So this creates a lot more transparency. So when people write, and I think this is the part where culture, I believe, is built in two ways. One is through the people, and usually it's their hiring managers, that they've experienced culture in the organization. Now, if that hiring manager is okay, so will be them, the team that works under them. And then the other thing is also about transparency around the company communication, about, what's happening, in terms of the business direction and all this. So these are things we make an effort to do a lot more, in our hangouts, once a month, to share with the team, across. So I think if you ask me, I wouldn't say I have a direct tool to measure, but I think how people leave, what they write in surveys are probably one of the most accurate way that we look at how strong is the culture now currently, across our global offices. And we also compare them by location, right? The turnover rate by locations, by roles, by departments, so that these demographics will give us a better understanding. Is it a people problem we are managing, or is it more of a management level or it's a culture level? So I think this gives us a better sense to zoom in, directly. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, maybe a quick
It
point.
seems like there's a quantity. Yeah, Brian.
Sorry, yeah, maybe just a quick point to add on that as well. I think just to further what Fiona has mentioned, I think having the culture where the team feel like they are not afraid of giving that feedback and having that transparency is really important as well. I think a lot of times, in a one-on-one settings, I would really ask my team how do they feel about certain things, and we want to encourage that they are not afraid of voicing out. Another thing that we have also done in our team, taking the best practice from a lot of the engineering team practices, that we do retrospective sessions. So where the team really just have a 1 hour where they just sit in a room and talk about a virtual room and talk about things that what has been going on that is great and not so great in the previous 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and just having that brainstorming session. Usually, myself, for example, I would not be part of it, but that would allow them to have a more open discussion, and then we look at the feedback and see what we can improve as well.
Yeah, I think there's a great point, right, Brian? I think in terms of like creating a safe environment for people to kind of feedback. And I think back to Fiona, I think you mentioned about surveys, right? Is it anonymous, or is it kind of like you have to put your name on it?
It's anonymous, because I think to us for now is we just want to create a psychological safety, right? And I think it's always like that. When surveys are being done, people question why they need to do it, right? But when they see you are taking action of the survey results and you're sharing, right? So we share those results as well, so I think that builds the assurance that, hey, we don't know who said that, but we have been seeing a trend of this repeated career development concerns, across the company. Then at least that gives us a more targeted way from a HR perspective to work on things that's going to move the needle, not something that we think out of our gut feel that, this is going to work, Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Makes all sense. Okay. And I think there's this pretty interesting question as well, is on diversity. So how do we then promote diversity and inclusion in our global talent acquisition efforts? Ying, you want to take this?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we see diversity in a few ways. I think one is definitely through gender, but for us also, we look at like a geographical diversity as well. So, without actually having to put intentional effort into it, I do think that our team is almost equally balanced, like 50% male, 50% female. So pretty diverse in that sense. And we're spread across like 6 countries in Southeast Asia. So for us, when we look for talent, we are quite open about which countries they may be based in. And, we promote the job posts in different countries as well. So it's really about selecting the right candidate that comes in from a certain country. Yeah. So while we do not make conscious effort in that aspect, I think naturally, like such a way of doing things does lead to a very diverse and inclusive kind of a team that we have.
Okay, and I think we'll just take on one last question. Perhaps it's on the, just see. Okay, I think we just have perhaps we take one more question, which is as a fresher in recruitment field, can I take advantage from global hiring trends? Do you have any advice for me to build a strong foundation to immerse myself into that trend?
Can I ask the question a little bit earlier, if you're there? When you said you want to take advantage of global hiring trends, right? What is the global hiring trends that I just want to understand some context to it? If you can just share with me a little bit so that I can know how to target the response a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm trying to understand what global hiring trends is that. Is that the trends in globalization or the like hiring outside, Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, Aliyah.
Yeah. So because when I have researched information about that the job that as a recruiter, I will feel now many company open for the expert or like recruit the people from other country more than in the past. So so I just have a concern about as me as a fresher in recruitment field, what should I do to take advantage from that trend? Like people now try to hire people from other country more. So how can I take advantage from this? Like that.
Okay. Okay, because you're in recruiter, I think it's more interesting to know, are you recruiting for a client or are you recruiting in-house, right? I think from what I understand from that perspective is that, in fact, I think people don't realize hiring the right people is so important. Sometimes they take a shortcut and say, hey, I don't have time, I'm just going to hire this person. But in a startup, you don't have the luxury to hire the wrong person, because that one culture fit, right, that is mismatched, right, it means that it will be a lot of time wasted, and not just wasted on the time of the teams. It's the recollaboration, the communication that goes in, so much effort that goes into it. So I think with the global hiring trends of really globalization and LinkedIn profiles, because I really started using LinkedIn in one of the earliest days, I saw it when I was in China, that, hey, this is perfect. All my talent pool are there. I can search for any kind of talents, that I think is interesting. And I think it really opened up this Pandora box, when I look at talents, and I think back to that question earlier, you should take advantage of the trends that with the diversity, you are able to understand the uniqueness of every talent, and your role as a recruiter is to really understand how do you know it so succinctly, because we are all make up so differently. We join different companies, our contexts, our stories are so different. We move careers from this industry to another. I find it a playground, to really know that, hey, there's somebody actually doing this thing and doing so much of this thing that they're doing it so well. So I think as a recruiter, if I ask me, the advantage you should take from is really being able to succinctly present the candidates in the kind of skill sets they can bring to the organization, and also the cultural fit. I always have 4 fits, which I call the personality fit, the cultural fit, the organization fit, the job fit, right? These I call the 4 fits. I always look at these things and I try to understand the uniqueness of each talent. And I think with the global hiring trend, right, you have mobility now. You can really look at talents, not just purely in your home country, but the uniqueness of people putting their passion in something. I think that's what always drives me, the excitement, and looking at, wow, they can do this for years, and that's why they're so good at something, and you want them in your organization now, or you want them for another company, or helping a client to find the best person. So I think it's about finding the right one. That is challenging today because there are many, but finding the right one. So I would say that if you ask me for the advice, how to build that strong foundation, is to really being able to listen in what is not written on that CV, that context that you value at your client, or you value at the in-house recruitment team, that other headhunters don't see it, but you saw that value, and that value works for your company. That is what I think is the foundation you need to build on and practice on, as you go on as a recruiter. Yeah, just my thoughts on that.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, thanks, Fiona, for that. Okay, so I think just want to close this out today. So I just want to take this chance to thank everyone on the panel for the very insightful sharing as well. So I just want to kind of wrap this up, right? So I think today we spoke a lot on the importance of embracing remote work as a way to tap into the global talent pool. We also talked about online platforms and HR partnerships to build remote teams, and the benefits of automating the onboarding process to save time and improve integration, engagement, and so on. And lastly, to really emphasize on the cultural fit and engagement is really key to building a cohesive remote team. So just kind of more forward-looking, looking ahead, remote work is definitely here to stay and offering significant advantages. And any business that's looking to navigate the geopolitical kind of challenges with the help of evolving tech, think about it this way, right? You only have one chance to create a very positive onboarding experience. So highly encourage everyone to invest in it and do it well the first time. Okay. So just to recap on this today's webinar, we will send a recap email with the recording and the notes, so you can always refer to it. And so just want to really close this off today. So just want to thank Ying, Brian, Fiona for this session today. And if there are more upcoming webinar, we'd love to have everyone here as well to sit in as well. So thanks everybody for your time and inputs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so much.
Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
All right. See you. Bye.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.